to record. Okay, I almost missed that. All right, so this is a common sense economics discussion on labor law reform and namely the PRO Act. And so a little bit about myself. First, I'm Dion Dizon. I'm the Political Education Director with the Hawaii State AFL-CIO, former member, rank and file member of OPEIU Local 277. And unlike my mom, who actually, she's a retired member of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. She went on strike twice in her teaching career. I actually walked into a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement. I never had to fight. And so for my passion in this work is really recognizing the fact that even if, some teachers did not join the strike that my mom was in, they also benefited from the sacrifices that the other teachers made. And so it's recognizing really that labor laws level the playing field and raise the floor for all workers. And so with that, I actually wanted to just a little bit of preaching to the choir, if we could, just by a show of hands, who of you knows anyone in your family, friends, or community that lost their job without justification? That at-will employment type of deal. What about who knows anyone that works more than one job to make ends meet? Yeah, I think especially in Hawaii. Then who's actually doing the same work, for less pay? More work or the same work for less pay? My sister. However, and then lastly, who do you know that cannot negotiate their own pay or benefits? Yeah, I think a lot of people. And so just kind of to just take us right into that discussion, I wanted to turn it over to Lorna Wu from District Council 50 in order to introduce our guest speaker. Lorna.
Thank you, Dion. Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the live stream. A special thanks to our IUPAT colleagues from the various district councils for supporting us and jumping on today. We really appreciate it. Mahalo to all of you. So on behalf of BMST Bully and District Council 50, it's a privilege to introduce Jimmy Williams Jr. to provide an update on the current status of the PRO Act. Jimmy began his career with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades as a glazer with District Council 21 in Philadelphia. He has served in various capacities and currently holds a position as General Vice President at Large. As an organizing director, he has led the charge in combating exploitive and unfair labor practices in the South. He has positioned the IUPAT as an ally to immigrants facing harsh realities of wage theft, misclassification, and the constant threat of deportation. Jimmy is a leader and a strong proponent of the PRO Act and has designated it as a top priority for the IUPAT. Please give a warm welcome to Jimmy Williams Jr. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, Lorna. Good to see you, Bowie. I see John on here as well. Good to see John and Dwayne. And to all my brothers and sisters from Hawaii, thanks for having me on tonight. Like Lorna said, that sounded like a really cool bio. Some of it might not be true, but Dion, I'm a fourth generation member of our union. And like you, I didn't have to fight to form my union. I was able to join as an apprentice. And work as early as 18 years of age under a collective bargaining agreement that was fought for 100 or so years previously. And that so many people have had the opportunity to raise a family off of good union wages and retire with a good health care or with a good secure pension and have health care throughout the terms of their employment. And, those are all the things that the collective bargaining agreements, provide to our membership. And currently we've seen such an erosion of labor laws in this country that it's becoming harder and harder for people to actually have access to collective bargaining and be a part of unions in the private sector. Like we're pretty much a private sector union. Union density is at only about 7% nationwide. That means 93% of the people that make a living in the private sector don't even have the same advantages that our union membership does that gets the value of working under a collective bargaining agreement. Yet, 70% of the American workforce, when asked if they could form or join a union in their workplace, they would. Unions are at the most favorable that we've ever been in this country, at least in my time and in my generation. I'm 43 years old, and it's exciting to see the President of the United States talk about the PRO Act in his speech last night to the both houses, to the House and the Senate. It's exciting. We live in exciting times when unions are at the tip of the tongue of the President of the United States. But we know it's going to be a struggle and it's going to be a fight. The PRO Act itself currently has 47 supporters in the United States Senate. There's still 3 that are held out. 2 in Arizona, Mark Kelly and Kristen Sinema, and then Mark Warner from Virginia. 3 Democrats that labor has supported and helped get elected are still holding out support for what is really and what should always be our number one issue, no matter what, as labor. We should always be advocating for and fighting for labor law reform. That should be the pillar of everything we do. Our union has laid a marker out that we won't support with both our efforts and our resources any candidates that don't support the PRO Act. And we're going to hold true to that. And if we can't move those 3 senators, I can guarantee you we're not going to support them going forward. At least the painters union isn't. The PRO Act's that important. And the PRO Act, just, so everybody knows, and we can make this interactive and ask questions, but the PRO Act really does seek to put the original intent of the National Labor Relations Act back in play. Taft-Hartley in 1947 was a killer for labor unions. When the National Labor Relations Act was passed, we've seen organizing in this country like we've never seen before. The opposite side, our opposition and management and corporations, they've seen just how strong unions could be. And really, we weren't all that political at that time period. We really were about growing our unions and getting as much collective bargaining as possible. And, Taft-Hartley rolled back so many of the gains that labor unions were able to make. And it's been a slow erosion of bad decisions at both the Supreme Court level and at the National Labor Relations Board that has made it so hard for workers to actually physically go through organizing campaigns. The deck is stacked against them. I think we've seen that on display with Amazon just last 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when the vote was counted. Countless numbers of unfair labor practices have already been filed by the Retail Workers Union in the Amazon campaign because management pulled out all the stops, and they always do. The PRO Act would make it much harder for management to run their anti-union campaigns the way they do. It would really make it, monetarily in their best interest to not break the law. Currently, whenever management breaks a law during an organizing campaign, they get a letter and told don't do it again. There's no fines, there's no penalties, and you can't take back telling somebody you're going to close the shop if you go union. You can't take back the fear that management puts into workers that are going through organizing campaigns. And that's one area where the PRO Act is definitely needed. It's sorely needed. But there's other things within the PRO Act that are really, really important. Tonight, later on, our union's holding a town hall around worker misclassification. And the PRO Act, applies the ABC test to workers that are working as independent contractors so that they can have access to collective bargaining. Right now, at least in the construction industry, we have countless thousands, if not millions of workers that can't even organize because they're classified as independent contractors. It's a tool that management uses to divide the workforce and not allow them to organize. And the PRO Act fixes that. And that would provide access to collective bargaining if the workers want it in a lot of industries. It would help reorganize the gig economy, workers that work at Uber and Lyft, and other companies as they're popping up will have the opportunity to organize. Right now, they can't even organize under the letter of the law because they're classified as independent contractors. That's a big fix within the PRO Act. The other thing that the PRO Act does and fixes long-standing labor law, which is guaranteeing a first contract. My first organizing drive as an organizer, we had a very small employer that we took to an election. It was 11 employees. We won 10-1. The employees overwhelmingly wanted the union, and the employer never bargained in good faith. And within a year, we were out, and we had to have a year cooling off period. We never got a first-time contract. And then he fired all 10 people, and we had to find work for those 10 people. And he waited the year to do it. But think about what those workers went through, what they wanted versus what they got, right? And the PRO Act does fix and get you to first-time contracts through arbitration, which is sorely needed in this country. I could just imagine if the Amazon workers won that election, just how hard it would have been to bargain with Amazon to a first contract, right? And it happens every day. And those are like the key highlights of what the PRO Act does. There's another really, really important component of the PRO Act. In 1947, when they passed Taft-Hartley, they also did away with what they call secondary boycotting. And secondary boycotting was a tool that unions were able to use to organize with each other. It's what created solidarity. Currently, we can't support each other's strikes. We can't walk off of job sites together because of secondary boycotting. We would be charged by the employers as secondary boycotting. The PRO Act fixes that, and it would allow for solidarity amongst unions that really hasn't existed and has been hard to maintain over the last 70 to 80 years because we can't physically support each other's strikes. We can give vocal support, but we can't walk out in solidarity with other trades and with other unions because we're just not allowed to under the law. The PRO Act fixes that, and that allows us to support one another like we never had before, and we need that. That was a tool that was used in the early stages, in the early days after the act, that really helped organize thousands and thousands of workers and got workers more access to collective bargaining. So the PRO Act, to me and to our union, is the number one priority of our union, and it always will be until we get there. It's the only way we'll be able to grow. And the thing that the other side will always say is that this is a handout to big labor, or it's a handout to labor unions. It's not. It puts the power back in the workers' hands. Anyone who's ever done an organizing campaign knows you're not going to win if you don't have the workers' support. It's what they want. And they need to have better access to organizing. It's a myth to say that it's a handout. It's also a myth to say that it's card check. It's not. The election procedures are still in place under the PRO Act. It is not a card check bill unless management commits egregious unfair labor practices during the campaign. Then yes, there's a provision there that it would allow for the NLRB to recognize the union as the bargaining agent on behalf of the workers. That's it. There'll still be free and fair elections for the workers, but management won't be able to hold closed-door meetings like they do now, captive audience meetings. They'd be outlawed. The union can't do it. The union can't even talk to the workers on working hours. We have to do things like house calls and hold meetings off hours. Yet management can sit them in a room, threaten them all day long, and there's no recourse. So the PRO Act fixes that. Now, politically, getting into the finish line is another story, right? We need to have a full 50 Democratic support amongst the small majority that is held right now in the Senate. We have to get there first before we can even really consider how to get the PRO Act across the finish line. If we can't get full 50 support from our Democratic colleagues that we've spent so much time supporting over the years, and we're going to have a problem. Now, the president has stated that he wants the PRO Act to be a part of any sort of infrastructure plan that gets put together here in the next couple months. It'll be interesting to see just what pieces of the PRO Act can get pushed through any sort of reconciliation process in the Senate. The Senate parliamentarian kind of ruled negatively on some things during the first COVID bill that was passed just about 2 months ago. That doesn't bode well for the PRO Act to be able to get through with a 50 vote and then Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker. But portions of the PRO Act may, like the fines against employers, like the worker misclassification piece. We might be able to get certain components of the PRO Act through. But where we stand now is we want to push for the entire bill. It was great to see that Joe Manchin, who was on the fence from West Virginia, gave support to the PRO Act just about 2 weeks ago. We have some other people that we can approach on the Republican side of the Senate, and it's already passed the House. Right now, I think it's important that we continue to push so we get to see where the politicians end up, right? Make them go on record. Back in 2008, the Employee Free Choice Act was a piece of legislation very similar to the PRO Act. And we had strong majorities in the House and the Senate when President Obama came into office. And within the first 2 months of his time in office, the filibuster was talked about. And there was one United States senator from my home state of Pennsylvania named Arlen Specter, who was a pro-labor, supposedly pro-labor Republican, and was a swing vote on a lot of key issues at the time because there was 59 Democratic senators at the time. Arlen Specter single-handedly killed the Employee Free Choice Act. He said that he couldn't support it. And what's funny is he was being primaried as a Republican. He switched his party's allegiance to run as a Democrat 2 months later and had the audacity and actually got a lot of support from labor when running as a Democrat after single-handedly killing our most important bill. Thankfully, Arlen Specter didn't win that election. And as a Pennsylvania resident, I never voted for him when he was a Republican because he was a phony. But at the time, President Obama did not push. He did not make the Employee Free Choice Act a piece of his legislative priorities. He let it go. Joe Biden's not doing that. By all accounts, Joe Biden is living up to what he ran on, and he's legislating and governing as a pro-union president, and it's exciting. We have to make sure that we're prepared to continue to push our politicians around our issues. And, going into 2022, if we don't get the PRO Act, we're going to have to go out and organize around it. We're going to have to take out some people that aren't supportive. And we're going to have to try to win because this will always be a priority of the labor movement. We have to continue to make it such. With that, I'll just open it up to any questions anybody may have. Dion, I don't know if you want them to run through you or if you want to just have people raise their hand, but
people can either raise their hand or they can type it in the chat. But I wanted to also be respectful of your time because I know you do have that town hall coming up. So, but I actually wanted to turn it over. Bully was going to do a thank you for you. So any questions, you guys can type it in the chat or raise your hand. I don't see any hands right now, though.
But, hi,
hey,
everybody.
Bully, I got my second shot today, man. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to actually come out there,
All right. We'll be waiting, man. Yeah, I'd like to thank all our brothers and sisters who jumped on in support of you, Jimmy. And thank you so much for being our speaker for our UPAT. Thank you.
No, thank you for your leadership, Bully.
Jimmy, I know you likely have to jump off in a bit so just wanted to also thank you, but we're gonna run right through. If you have questions after we continue, everyone, please just type it in the chat. But I actually wanted to turn it over to Leslie, who's gonna share some common sense economics and tying it down to how this plays out in Hawaii, because all of our elected leaders are on board. However, this is a 50-state fight. So Leslie.
Thanks, Dion. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Hi, everyone. I'm here to talk about the PRO Act and to provide a little bit of information on how specifically it relates to Hawaii. Our current labor laws have been eroded and are outdated. Our laws don't discourage, nor do they stop corporations from breaking the rules. In fact, weak labor laws are largely responsible for the new Gilded Age we're presently living in. We haven't seen this level of wealth inequality since the 1930s, right before the passage of the National Labor Relations Act, also known as the Wagner Act. While the share of income going to the top 10% increased dramatically, we can see from this slide that working people in the middle class saw their share of income shrink as union membership declined. As the number of workers protected by unions declined, workers' wages fell. None of this is a coincidence. Over the past 80 years, our labor laws have been intentionally weakened by the wealthiest families and corporations, making it harder for working people to improve their conditions. Their agenda has been eliminating unions, including public unions, so they can get their hands on public money and resources. So let's brainstorm for a minute, you guys. Let's think about how our broken labor laws allowed corporations to attack workers' rights to organize. Let's think of some specific ways they've done that. If you folks could please type in the chat some of the ways or tactics corporations have used this to block workers from organizing. I'll give you guys a minute to do this.
We're shy, Leslie.
Are you guys shy?
Yeah, just roll.
Okay. Well, you know, as we saw on Amazon, right? Some of the threats were threatening pro-union workers with firing, holding mandatory meetings like they do at Target here in Hawaii, you know, forcing workers to watch anti-union videos, refusing bargaining contracts or bargaining in bad faith, prohibiting working people from organizing or collective bargaining, and then breaking strikes, replacing workers and avoiding accountability. Here in Hawaii, Kapa'a in Kauai is the most economically unequal in our state. The top 1% make 25.6 times more than the bottom 99%. The average income of the top 1% is almost $1.5 million. The average income of the bottom 99% is $55,000. If we look at this graphic on the share of income going to the top 1% since the 1920s, we see the period between 1960 and 1980 was fairly low. So out of curiosity, I looked at Hawaii in 1970. In 1970, union density was at its highest. 35.1% of workers belonged to unions. Home ownership was at 66.5%, and one of the largest private employers was Castle and Cook, and many of those jobs were ILWU. As you can see, Hawaii is still holding strong. It has the highest density in the US. However, since 1970, there's been more than a 10% decline in union membership, an 8% drop in home ownership, and the largest private employer today is Altris, which is a temp agency providing low-wage, precarious jobs with no benefits or pensions for the next generation of workers in Hawaii. As a result, most workers here are forced to work multiple jobs, and for many, over 50% of their wages go to housing. Housing is almost impossible for many people to own. Even predominantly Republican states like Arizona presently have a higher minimum wage than ours. So what's the biggest threat to the largest unionized workforce in Hawaii? Privatization and public-private partnerships, PPPs or P3s. Privatization means less fiscal transparency or public money, lower wages, and these are state tax dollars we're outsourcing, essentially shortchanging ourselves of public services. One of the largest corporations we outsource food services and our beloved lunch ladies to is Sodexo, a multinational corporation whose CEO was paid $3.6 million last year. Nationally, well, only 10.8% of US workers were members of a union. in 2020. The good news is that unions have steadily been growing in popularity over the past 10 years. A recent survey found that 65% of Americans approve of labor unions, and this is one of the highest mark in the last 50 years. Another study showed that nearly half of all non-union members in the country say they would vote to join a union if they could. So that's more than 60 million Americans. Clearly, inequality has skyrocketed because union membership had dwindled and policymakers have failed to pass pro-worker labor laws. Working people have fought and won better wages. And as we can see from this chart, a collective voice means higher wages for everyone, but especially for those workers who've been marginalized. We know that trade unions are the most racially integrated voluntary association in the United States. And at their best, they break down racist, nativist, and homophobic tendencies. At 12.5 million, the AFL-CIO is the largest civil rights organization in the United States. Similar to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the PRO Act is both labor law and civil rights legislation. Not only does a collective voice mean a fair return on our work, it also means having the freedom to care for ourselves and our families and to retire in dignity. Workers with union contracts not only have higher access to health care and paid leave, they're more likely to have a defined benefit pension, 62 percentage points higher. Thanks to organized labor, Hawaii has one of the highest percentages of people covered by health insurance in the United States. And obviously, this is absolutely critical during a crisis like a pandemic. So this is why protecting the right to organize, or the PRO Act, is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to increase worker power, rebuild our economy, and grow America's labor movement. The PRO Act addresses the three major components of labor law that have been weakened over the past decades, and at the same time creates new and essential mechanisms for workers to use when their labor rights have been violated. It's the most significant worker empowerment legislation since the Great Depression because it will empower workers to exercise our freedom to organize and bargain, ensure that workers can reach a first contract quickly after the union's recognized, and employers' practice of punishing striking workers by hiring permanent replacements, hold corporations accountable by strengthening the National Labor Relations Board, repeal right-to-work laws, the divisive and racist laws created during the Jim Crow era, and create pathways for workers to form unions without fear in new industries like big tech. So I'm going to share a link to the PRO Act Worker Toolkit in the chat, so you folks can have the tools to hold your own rally. Let's see, copy.
I shared it, Leslie.
Oh, did you already share it? Cool, thank you. By getting Congress to pass this legislation, we can restore power to working people and improve the economy for all of us, not just the wealthy. Yet this will happen only if we work together and take action by engaging our family, friends, and coworkers as we are today. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Pewitt, Mike, and the other breakout discussion leaders to join the conversation and share their thoughts on next steps before we go into breakout sessions.
Okay. If you can stop share. So I actually want to invite Michael Goliuk to actually share just a brief update on what's going on the ground in our legislative session.
Good afternoon, everybody. Michael Goliuk. I represent private work here with the AFL-CIO. Some of the things look bleak and some of the things don't look that great. We have gotten a couple things passed here at the Hawaii State Legislature. First one is SB 793, which actually got rid of the sub-minimum wage for workers with disabilities. This is something that it's been a long time fight, making sure that everybody that's working gets paid at least the minimum wage, or we know it's not a living wage. The other one that was passed, it was SB 309. This one outlawed deep fakes, which is basically revenge porn. It was championed by our by SAG-AFTRA and IATSE. At the national level, we saw this past Tuesday, President Biden signed an executive order raising the minimum wage for federal contractors to $15 an hour. These are great steps because the federal government is the largest employer outside of the state of Hawaii, here in our state. So these are some of the things that are happening locally and nationally that are hopefully moving the ball forward. But we definitely still need to make sure that we can do everything we can to pass the PRO Act.
Thank you, Mike. And just a little update for myself. The state Fed here had kind of spearheaded an effort to get essential worker protection. And so although our bills died, we did get a resolution adopted urging all law enforcement, for law enforcement, urging the enforcement and prosecution, the vigorous enforcement and prosecution of offenses committed against essential workers while on the job. So we're happy about that. And lastly, I wanted to invite Lorna, if you would.
So I know you guys just wanted me to give a quick update on the resolutions that we initiated this year. So just kind of giving you like a little bit of back history on it. Because of the success of the past election, kind of like what Jimmy said, the Democrats took the majority of the House, the Senate, and the White House. So the IUPAT took the initiative to spearhead the PRO Act campaign. So the initiative was aimed to bring together the entire labor movement in support of what would be like the first major labor law reform in like 100 years. So our international created this movement to empower those who are less fortunate and are unable to join or form unions. The goal at the time was to get every politician on record stating their support for the PRO Act. And so what we did at DC 50 locally, we thought we'd mirror that same IUPAT plan. We wanted to hold elected officials accountable who claimed that they support unions. So we went ahead and we introduced 4 resolutions, and we were successful in getting 3 of them adopted with the help of many of you guys that are out here today. So we really, really appreciate that. And we're just going to keep pushing forward and sending those resolutions to Congress and to Joe Biden now, the president, and hopefully we'll get those passed soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So I did tell you earlier that this is going to be interactive, but just to kind of get some energy flowing, I'm going to open the breakout rooms. If you would join the breakout room, okay? Because this is actually going to be just, you'll see. All right, I'm going to open the rooms. If you could go ahead and join the rooms. You just have 5 minutes. So go ahead and join the room. Dwayne, how come you still in here with me? All right, so for those of you who are still in here, the question is actually, what is your biggest takeaways from what you heard so far? John, you want to start? Why? That's why you never join the room. You never like talk, trick you. I stay in here. Oh, shoot.
For you, I just enjoying it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So how's it going?
as well as, oh, okay.
Sorry
So,
about
you didn't get me saying that,
that.
huh?
Say it again.
No, that's okay. So, first of all, just a quick introduction. As you can see from my thing, I'm from the University of Hawaii West Oahu Center for Labor Education and Research, and I'm director of the center. And Dr. Lopez is my colleague there and fellow faculty at the center. So, yeah, we've been trying to research this as much as possible and find out what's going on, and then get information out where we can. And it's great to have Dion there as somebody who can take this stuff and then and circulate it wherever possible. We have some really good summaries of the PRO Act changes to the National Labor Relations Act, in addition to the ones that are in the toolkit. So if you're interested in more, maybe I'll send a couple. I've got two that I really like because they sort of go through specifically all the proposed changes. And I'm just really delighted. When I watched the State of the Union address the other day, I was telling my wife, it's the first time I've ever seen a president of the United States. And I've been watching these things because I'm an old guy, you know, for a long time. And it's the first time I've seen a president make that kind of commitment to labor unions and also particularly to labor law reform. And this time, we use the term labor law reform is to make it better for workers. The term is abused sometimes by people who are trying to make it only better for corporations.
Yeah, no, that's important. That's a very important distinction. And I think that's why the PRO Act is so important. And I would appreciate if you could go ahead and send those out that you want to share, that
Sure.
we can distribute to the group. So with that, I appreciate you remembering to kind of identify, because I didn't get to actually introduce where Leslie was from. So the Center for Labor Education and Research, but let us kind of tie together what you guys shared in your breakout rooms. And so if the group discussion leaders could just rapid fire share how that went.
I can go. I had a great group, and one takeaway that they stressed is that we cannot let elected officials that have not supported the PRO Act get off easy. The pressure is on. We need to pressure politicians. And another comment was that the political stars have aligned. This is a really critical chance for us to take full advantage of this opportunity. And it's going to require 60 votes, or it will go to a filibuster. And so one suggestion was to possibly break up the bill to get it through, but we need to get at least 50 Democrats and then 10 Republicans. So the pressure's on, and this is an incredible opportunity to help improve the lives of everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I will. We just had one comment that said that when people have good wages, they make bigger purchases and they actually help the economy. So, the PRO Act would be really helpful for these individuals to be able to become union members, to ensure that they have good wages and health benefits and long-term care, as well as annuities and pensions and stuff to ensure for the duration of their lives.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. And who is our next group leader, discussion leader?
I'll go next.
There you are.
Well, Leslie's presentation pointed out the need for the PRO Act, even here in Hawaii. And in Hawaii, it's considered a very labor-friendly state, that we definitely do need it here in Hawaii, just like they did it across, and especially in the red states. But that we need to do anything that we can to help make sure we can pass the PRO Act, and that we are lucky that we have all four of our elected. Now, all four of our members of the Codells that support the PRO Act, but we now need to export our aloha to the other states that need the help to get those senators off their okoles and do the right thing for labor and the middle class and build our economy. Like the president said last night, it's time to build the economy from the middle and bottom up, not from the top down.
Oh, absolutely. I think that trickle-down economics, it's been proven after decades, it doesn't work. And our last group leader, Dr. Pewitt, that was you, right?
Oh, okay. I thought, sorry, that's I kind of thought that's what I was doing. First of all,
Oh,
you put me in a group for only a minute or two, and I have a problem. Oops, am I okay? So, and that is that I talked the whole time almost. So I feel sorry that I bulldozed those people. My
okay.
bad. But I will say one point that I think we have to remember is that we have to be thinking long term in terms of the midterm elections, because history tells us that this is when, you know, everything that Biden has outlined as a priority is at risk if the Democrats lose seats at the midterm election. So to me, this is a huge priority for us in getting the PRO Act, because people are going to be delaying this as much as possible, and hoping that the Republicans can take back either a House or both parts of Congress. And as you probably heard, Trump has announced that if the Democrats lose the House or the Senate, particularly the House now, he will run for president again. And so this is a huge test that is before us. We can't afford to sit back and rest on the laurels of the last election.
Thank you for that.
As it was.
Yeah, exactly to your point, though, about not being able to rest on our laurels. You know, this is us actually putting in the work, and this common sense economics discussion and the slides that, you know, the toolkit we dropped in the chat. It's really for each of you in your locals, you know, this, if you want to have this discussion for your members, we're happy to help facilitate and continue the discussion, you know, so like how you said, from the ground up, middle up, not top down, that's the organizing that we're doing. So with that, just kind of fast forwarding to just remind everybody, you heard Jimmy announce and share the town hall that's coming up right after this. So for you, the IUPAT people, we want to make sure you have a bathroom break before you jump onto the town hall. And also for Saturday, Local 5 has organized an International Workers' Day March. And so I have committed myself to being there. So Dion party of one, looking for friends. I'm going to be at the corner of Kaiwai Elementary School under the plumeria tree with a PRO Act banner. And then if I can manage it, like a flag girl, I have the AFL-CIO banner too. That's the plan. So if you can come out, please come out. And with that, Randy, did you have any closing comments you wanted to share from the State Fed?
No, just wanted to thank Lorna and Bully and Dion for arranging. I'm really impressed and appreciative that Jimmy could spend some time with us, because those guys in DC are plenty busy. But thank you guys all for joining, and hey, let's keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So with that, any final words, Bully, Lorna? Because otherwise we are, wow.
No, thank you so much, everybody, for joining on today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody.